Center for Cities, and Isandla recognizes that knowledge is power, and the way in which you produce knowledge has implications for the politics and the power dynamics within which it is created. So this book sought to blur some of those boundaries. It sought to look at many different ways of producing knowledge and seeing if we can actually weave them together. We have practitioners, we have officials, we have policymakers, we have academics, we have pseudo-academics, we have a whole range of people who have decided to write for this book. And when we got these different contributions in, we tried really hard to create a balance between the different voices that would come through. But more so than just the balance and the actual sets of contributions, we did something very unconventional for, say, a typical academic book. So in a typical academic book, for those who haven't been a part of one, you submit your submission, you say what you want to say, they decide if it fits with the book, and then it either goes in or it goes out of the book. This is very different in the sense that people submitted abstracts, and on the basis of those abstracts, we all sat down and we had long conversations about what each contribution could do for the book as a whole. So it was quite literally a co-produced process of what each and every chapter was going to do. Now, obviously, people had their own ideas about what they wanted their chapters to mean and how they wanted them to contribute, but this was greatly influenced by a series of multiple-day workshops with all of the other participants and even people who ended up not participating in the end. Am I moving around?
Fine.
So this was very different from that perspective. I think in some ways it was quite challenging for a conventional academic. For a conventional academic, usually you write your chapter and at the end you say, it's actually very complex and we need more research. And this is something we would not accept in this process. When academics are in the room with officials, with policymakers, with activists, they needed more. They needed to understand what does this knowledge add up to and how can it help us? And so it turns out the process, the sort of step from knowledge creation to applicability and relevance is not sort of an easy and linear process. It does require conversations, muddling, messiness, and this was definitely part of the process. So it wasn't the easiest process, I think, for some of the academics involved, but neither for the activists and policymakers. The process of trying to connect to bodies of literature, in some cases it's unclear if you want to connect to the right to the city literature, or perhaps an upgrading literature, or maybe a literature around local level politics. Picking that body of literature, fleshing it out, and so much has been written in South Africa and internationally, was definitely hard. I think for a lot of people it was also really difficult to understand how long and cumbersome a peer review process is, and I hope you can have a little bit more respect for the academic drudgery that we all go through. Multiple rounds of edits from the editors themselves, from other people in the collective, from the 2 rounds of peer reviewers, and then from the final stage editors was definitely something that I think a lot of people struggled with. So I really want to give a hand to all of the authors coming from any register of knowledge who came through this process and challenged themselves to be part of this sort of, I would say, kind of blurry and messy knowledge production process, but really coming out with a product that I think very much speaks to what we believe in, which is ultimately that to conquer complex issues, we need complex knowledge production processes. And I think this book very much speaks to that. I'm almost done. Almost done. All right. So finally, I think one of the things that I'd like to point out specifically, which you will definitely see in the conclusion and the introductions to the book, is that this book sought to take very seriously the tools, instruments, operationalities, and logics that are required to actually think through the upgrading process. And this is in terms of land, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of facilities and community engagement. But it sought to simultaneously deal with issues of power and politics that play out at settlement scales, at city scales, and sometimes even in international and relational arenas. I think this is a really powerful contribution that the book makes, and each chapter does this in a different way. But the question of how we can be simultaneously radical and structural while also recognizing the need to be incremental, move slowly, and deal with complexity is something I think that the book offers a lot. So the concept, for example, of radical incrementalism or critical propositionality are both themes that I think are woven through the book and which you will see in the introduction and conclusion. I'd like to take the opportunity just for the authors in the audience to raise their hands. There's quite a few people here, and I'd like to just offer a round of applause for you guys. So if you authored or co-authored one of the chapters, if you could just raise your hand quickly. Thank you to everybody. Miriam? Is Miriam here? Are you going to do a thank you for the publisher? Okay. All right, I'm going to pass back to Miriam now. Thank you also to my ACC colleagues who have come through and have been very supportive in this whole process.